My name is Mary, and I'm 38 years old. For the past 14 years, I've been a homemaker, married to Scott, a successful doctor. Though we never had children, our life together was stable, reasonable, even happy. But one evening, everything changed. Scott came home late, as usual, and dropped a bombshell. "Mary," he said, his voice cold, "this is the end for us." Confused, I asked, "What do you mean?" "I've decided to marry my mistress," he replied bluntly. "We're getting divorced today." "Marry your mistress?" I was stunned. "What are you talking about?" "I've made up my mind. I'm leaving you for her. Besides, we didn't marry for love, so I'm sure you won't mind." It was true. Our marriage hadn't been born from love. Scott's parents wanted him to marry, and they found me to be a suitable match. We barely knew each other when we got married, and it happened quickly. The only thing we shared in common was our last name. People would call it fate, and for a while, I liked that idea. We managed our marriage, but I never imagined it would end this way, after 14 years. "Are you seriously going to marry her?" I asked. "When did you even start seeing her?" "It's not cheating," he shot back. "I met her about a year ago. She works as a lawyer at a hospital, and she's everything you're not: charming, caring, and full of life. It's natural I'd be drawn to her." "Natural?" I was in disbelief. "You think this is natural?" "Yes," he said, his voice firm. "These 14 years with you have been hell. I'm done supporting someone so boring, but it ends today." I was at a loss for words. "How can you say that?" "It's the truth," he said. "You're just a homemaker who does nothing. She's a successful lawyer. Ask any man. They choose her over you. A doctor like me doesn't need someone like you." I stood frowned. I never thought Scott could speak to me this way, so calmly, so cruelly. "Fine," I said, swallowing the bitterness rising in my throat. "Let's divorce. We can discuss alimony and property division later. With a lawyer, I'll sign the divorce papers and send them to you." Scott interrupted. "No need for all that. We don't even need divorce papers." "What do you mean? We can't just separate without them?" "You're so naive," he sneered. "We're not even married." I stared at him, horrified. "What are you talking about? We've been married for 14 years. "We're not," he said casually. "I never submitted our marriage registration. We've just been cohabiting all this time. No marriage, no divorce, no alimony. You thought you'd get my money, but you won't get a penny." The words didn't make sense. "Are you joking? We've been living as a married couple all these years." "Normally, yes," he said. "But when we got married, I set some rules. I take care of all the official matters, and you'd handle the house. I never filed the marriage papers. I wasn't about to make it official. I married you as a housekeeper, and it worked for both of us." I was stunned, speechless. "You should have refused the proposal in the first place, then." "I couldn't," he said with a shrug. "My parents were insistent, and besides, I needed someone to handle the house while I focused on my work. It was a good deal for you, too. You didn't have to work, and you had a roof over your head. Plus, you were probably feeling pressured by your friends to get married. You were seen as the woman who married a doctor. Our whole relationship was a win-win for both of us, and now it ends. You should be grateful for the time you had." I couldn't process the anger and humiliation coursing through me. "And what about my father?" I asked, trying to hold on to my composure. "You're threatening him, aren't you?" Scott's face hardened. "If you do anything stupid, I'll make sure your father's contract with the hospital ends. You won't do anything to ruin your father's business, right?" My father ran a medical equipment company, and it was through my marriage to Scott that we'd made important connections, but I wasn't afraid. I smiled. "Despite everything I knew about your mistress, and I knew you never submitted our marriage registration." Scott stared at me, his face twisting with disbelief. "That's impossible." For the past 5 months, I had suspected Scott was having an affair, but I didn't have enough proof to confront him. I spent that time preparing for the inevitable day when he would bring it up, planning my revenge, so I hired a private investigator. "Ma'am, there are 2 things I need to tell you," the investigator said. "First, your husband is indeed having an affair. We have evidence of him entering a hotel with a woman named Lauren from his workplace. Second, from their conversations, it seems you two are not legally married." "Not legally married?" I was confused. "What does that mean?" The investigator continued. I overheard your husband and his mistress at a cafe. He said they didn't need to worry about alimony or property division because they never submitted a marriage registration. I was stunned. I can't believe it. We've been living as a married couple for 14 years. I don't know why he didn't submit the marriage registration. The investigator replied. That's why he never let you handle any official procedures. How could this happen? I whispered, barely able to process the information. It's rare, but not unheard of, for someone to go 14 years without submitting the marriage registration. But if we were never married, what can I do? Not necessarily, the investigator said, his voice taking on a more determined tone. There is still a way to make him pay for deceiving you all these years. We need to prepare, without him noticing. And so, I began to make my move with the investigator's help. Scott, of course, was confident. So what if you knew we were never married? He scoffed. It doesn't matter what I do with other women. I don't have to take responsibility. I felt foolish for not knowing sooner, but in that moment, it was clear he was the one who should feel pitiful. What do you mean? I asked, looking at him coldly. We were never legally married, Scott said smugly. We were just living together. You're wrong, I said, barely able to contain my anger. We may not have been married, but we had what's called a common law relationship, and in a common law marriage, you can't claim alimony and divide property. You didn't know that, did you? Scott's face turned white. What? And now you're telling me to hand over the money I worked hard for and the furniture I bought? Yes, that's correct, the lawyer replied calmly. The money you earned and the furniture are subject to property division. Why does it have to be like that? Scott demanded. Who did the housework while I was working? Who cooked the meals with the groceries I bought? That's irrelevant now, the lawyer said. No, it's very relevant. A homemaker is entitled to property division because housework and child care have economic value. Speaking as a human, not just a lawyer, do you think housework is something anyone can do? That is just expected of a homemaker. The reason you were able to live freely is because of her support. Don't get that wrong. Scott didn't respond immediately, but his face flushed with anger. This situation is the result of your actions, the lawyer continued, yet you have the audacity to be selfish about it. What did you say? Scott muttered, but the lawyer ignored him. Anyway, she's entitled to half of the assets for property division, the lawyer stated firmly. That's how it is. Damn, Scott muttered under his breath. And regarding alimony, we intend to claim $200, 000 from you, the lawyer added, keeping his tone steady. $200, 000. Why so much for a relationship that wasn't even a marriage? Scott protested. It's precisely because you weren't married normally. Alimony claims in common law relationships typically range from $20, 000 to $80, 000. The lawyer explained. However, in your case, you pretended to be married for 14 years and selfishly tried to discard her when you found someone else. The amount is determined by the severity and duration of your actions. Scott clenched his jaw, but the lawyer didn't stop. You might think 14 years is a short time, but it's longer than you realize. During that time, she devoted herself to you, believing you were truly married. You have no right to complain after betraying her. It was a perfect rebuttal. Scott fell silent, clearly defeated. He reluctantly agreed to my demands. I also sent a notice of claim for alimony to his mistress. Thanks to the investigator, I knew exactly who she was and where to find her. Her name was Lauren, and she worked at the same hospital. When she received the notice, she must have been shocked. Wait a minute, this isn't what you told me, she said to Scott when she confronted him. What do you want? Scott snapped. I told you not to talk to me at the hospital. I got this from your wife. You said there wouldn't be any alimony because we weren't married. What's this all about? In a panic, Lauren confronted Scott at the hospital with the notice I sent. Okay, let's talk about this later. Not here. There are too many people around, Scott said, his voice urgent. We'll both be in trouble if this turns into a rumor. I don't care about that, Lauren shot back. I can't pay this amount of alimony. You said it was okay, so you should pay it for me. I will pay not a penny, Scott said, trying to push the responsibility onto her. You were the one who married me. You said I was the only one for you and that you wanted to marry me. Hey, quiet down. Everyone can't hear us. Lauren hissed, looking around. Just so you know, I'm not in the wrong here. If you want to make amends with your wife, do it yourself. Tell her I don't owe her a penny, and you take care of everything. This exchange revealed their affair to the entire hospital. The gossip quickly spread, and Scott and Lauren became the talk of the place. The final blow came when my father, in response to the scandal, requested the hospital cancel their contract with the facility. We apologize, but we would like to terminate our contract at the end of next month, my father informed the hospital. The hospital, aware of the rumors, asked, "Excuse me for asking, but is the reason for canceling the contract related to Dr. Scott's affair? It's already becoming a rumor, especially since Lauren is presumed to be involved." I couldn't believe it had come to this. I never imagined Scott had been pretending to be married for 14 years without submitting a marriage registration. The hospital staff was shocked. "You mean he never submitted the registration? Were you not aware?" they asked. All we knew was that Scott had been married and had an affair. The revelation that he hadn't even submitted the marriage registration was a shock to me and the hospital staff. The rumors didn't just stay within the hospital. Word quickly spread to patients, and both Scott and Lauren received cold stares. Unable to endure the scandal, they both resigned. My father later asked, "Did you manage to get the alimony?" "Yes, I received payments from both him and his mistress," I replied. She initially refused to pay, claiming she was deceived, but the lawyer made it clear her argument wouldn't hold. She reluctantly agreed to pay. "That's good," my father said. "And what about the contract with the hospital? Did it get cancelled?" "No, that's off the table," I said. "Scott resigned, and since our company is trusted, the hospital asked us not to cancel the contract. We couldn't cancel it after they asked like that." "That's a relief," my father said. I moved on with my life in a new place, finding happiness again. A year and a half later, my ex-husband contacted me. "Is it true you got remarried?" he asked, his voice tight. I had married a man I met at work, and somehow, Scott had found out. "Whose number is this?" I wondered, irritated by his audacity. "You're going through the trouble of changing your number just to contact me." "Just answer my question," he demanded. "Did you get married?" "Yes, I got married," I replied. "You betrayed me. We were never legally married, so I didn't think it would matter to you." "That's a different matter," he said, his tone bitter. "Things are different now. We're completely separated, so my marriage has nothing to do with you." "Is that why you contacted me?" I asked, feeling a mix of confusion and amusement. Scott seemed at a loss for words. "Of course you're still unmarried," he sneered, "since you probably hadn't submitted a marriage registration again. You're that kind of woman." But things weren't as he imagined. "Unfortunately for you," I said calmly, "my husband isn't the kind of person to do such terrible things. He knows all about your story. To make sure I wouldn't feel anxious, we went to the office together to submit the registration." I paused, letting my words sink in. "Sadly for you, things aren't as you thought." Scott didn't respond. "I understand you might want me to be unhappy because you're miserable," I added, "but sorry, we're happily married." I hung up the phone and felt a sense of finality. I didn't know what kind of life he led now, but unless he changed his selfish ways, it was unlikely he'd ever find happiness. "Yes," I said, now taking control of the conversation. "You thought you could get away with this, but you're in for a surprise. If a couple lives together with mutual intent to marry and shares household life for more than 2 years, they're considered to be in a common law marriage. We've been together for 14 years, and we had a wedding ceremony. Our families and friends know us as a married couple." Scott was silent as I continued. "So, I'm claiming alimony and property division. I'm not an expert, but I've already consulted a lawyer, and I'm moving forward with this." His arrogance melted away as he realized the truth. "Even if you can't claim alimony and property division, you're just an unemployed homemaker. What's your plan? Rely on your parents after I kick you out?" I looked him in the eye. "I've already found a job. I'm starting next month, and I've been looking at a new place. Don't worry about me." Scott had underestimated me, assuming I'd be helpless without him. The tables had turned. "And just so you know, I added, my voice sharp. I'm going to tell our parents everything. They think we're still married, so it's only right I inform them that this relationship is ending. His face twisted with panic. You're calling them? Please, don't. You know how strict my parents are. If they find out about this, I'm done. I shook my head in disbelief. You're worried about your parents finding out? After 14 years of selfishness, you're afraid of their reaction? You should have refused the marriage in the first place if you never intended to marry. I can accept that. Without hesitation, I picked up my phone and called both of our parents. All 5 of them were shocked and immediately arranged to meet at our house. I've heard everything over the phone. Is it true that you pretended to be married for 14 years without submitting the marriage registration? Scott's father asked, his voice tight with anger. It's true, Scott admitted. I didn't submit it. Why would you do such a thing? Didn't you ever think about how Mary would feel? His father's voice wavered with disbelief. I had no choice, Scott mumbled. No choice. His father's voice rose in frustration. How can you even say that? It's your fault. Dad and Mom, I didn't want to get married, but you started looking for a bride, saying it was time. You arranged meetings and tried to force me into it. You're the ones who pressured me into this marriage. You agreed to it, didn't you? His father shot back. If you were so opposed to it, why didn't you refuse? I had to agree, Scott said, his voice defensive. If I refused, you would have made a scene, so I decided to go along with it. If you were resolved to marry her, why didn't you submit the marriage registration? His father was incredulous. I read about a guy online who was in the same situation, Scott explained. He didn't want to marry either, but he had to. He lived as though he was married without submitting the registration, and then, when he met someone he truly loved, he told the truth and married her for real. That's appalling, his father exclaimed. And what happened to that guy? He's married to the woman he loves now, Scott said, his eyes gleaming with a sense of finality. And I'll marry my girlfriend. I'll have a real marriage. At this, my parents, who had been silent up until then, finally spoke. A real marriage. My mother's voice trembled with disbelief. Do you even remember what you said at our wedding? You promised you would care for each other and build a home full of smiles. What did those words mean to you? We sent our daughter to you hoping for her happiness, my father added, his voice heavy with disappointment. But you deceived her for 14 years without submitting a marriage registration. Did you build a home full of smiles? Now you are leaving her for another woman. Can someone who acts with such disregard for others, changing partners without care, truly have a real marriage? I was happy you married our daughter, not just because you were a doctor, my mother continued, her voice breaking. I thought you were sincere, that you could build a happy home together, but it seems we were mistaken and deceived. And then you had the nerve to threaten our daughter. My father's tone turned cold, that if she told us, you'd cut off the contract with our company. Is that true? Scott frowned, his face pale. What? Seriously, my father said, voice like ice, if you're going to threaten our daughter, we'll cut the contract ourselves. We will not tolerate this. Scott's panic was palpable. Please wait, this is getting out of hand. Let's just talk this through. But my father-in-law, now being furious, grabbed Scott by the collar. We didn't raise you to be such a scoundrel. What were you thinking? Father, please stop, Scott said, trying to pull away. You thought you were doing yourself a favor by not submitting the registration, my father-in-law continued. But all you did was string Mary along for 14 years. What were you thinking? Causing this kind of trouble for others. The room fell silent. My husband, facing the weight of my father-in-law's words, had nothing left to say. My parents, I'm truly sorry for all the trouble caused, Scott muttered, but my father cut him off. No, you shouldn't apologize to us, my father said sternly. This isn't our fault. However, as parents, it's partly our responsibility for letting you act this way. Turning to me, he said softly, for now, we'll take him home and make sure he doesn't continue this reckless behavior. We'll deal with the aftermath properly. We're very sorry for all this. With that, Scott was led away by his parents, back to his childhood home. My parents turned to me, their voices filled with warmth and concern. You've been through so much, sweetheart. You should come home and rest. We'll think about what to do next later. You don't need to worry about anything right now. I was exhausted, deceived, and drained, but their kindness was a comfort. "Thank you, but I'm not going back home yet," I said, my voice firm. "I still have things I need to do." I declined their offer and stayed in my own home, determined to handle this on my own. I had to prepare for the final settlement with my now ex-husband. I gathered evidence for our common law relationship, getting ready to claim alimony and divide our assets. A few weeks later, I arranged a meeting with a lawyer. Even if I agreed to alimony, why should I divide the property? Scott rented. She's been a homemaker for 14 years, never worked a day in her life. I've paid for everything: furniture, the clothes, the food,